What is up, everybody? It's your boy DFS Jimmy back with you for another edition of the Fanshare Sports Early Week Course Preview. Currently, it is Sunday night, trying to get a jump on things for the week. Phil is battling Paul Casey down the stretch at Pebble Beach as we speak. Like I said, just trying to get a bit of a jump on next week. We have a lot of information about Riviera, despite not knowing the winner of the current tournament because of the delay for hail earlier today. I think we'll be able to get a good grasp on what's going on with Riviera. Again, a lot of history, very similar to Augusta in the sense that it has remained largely an unchanged golf course for most of the time that it's been on tour. Actually, I don't think it's been changed hardly at all. Maybe lengthened slightly, but in the past 5 years, really no major changes. Riviera Country Club, located in Pacific Palisades, California. Again, still part of the West Coast swing. Greens are going to stay POA. As we are in California, so the greens are going to be the same as that we've seen recently. What is going to be different about Riviera than maybe some of the other courses we've seen recently, anyway, is the kikuyu grass for the fairways and the areas around the greens. Very dense grass. Ball tends to sit up. Phil Mickelson noted as really enjoying this grass because it allows him to do some creative things around the green. You can really get a wedge under the ball here close into the greens. Again, the ball sits up, kind of springy grass. Very different for some of the folks that aren't used to playing it. But a lot of the Aussies really like it, as well as the South African players. Pretty native grasses in those parts of the country or in those parts of the world for those guys. So they're very familiar with the kikuyu grass, how it plays. So definitely give a look at some of the Euro or South African players this week, the Aussie players that might be a little more familiar with the kikuyu grass. As per usual, we are going to look at the scorecard. Pretty unique scorecard at Riviera for those that are new, that have not been part of DFS golf community for a while, or this is the first year that they're getting an experience with Riviera. Really fun tournament to watch. Dynamic golf course, very old school, but a lot of really interesting holes and a lot of areas for the guys to get creative around this golf course, and especially for the guys that really like to work the ball. You can definitely try to access some of the really tight pins here by working the ball, and a course that tends to favor guys that play a left to right ball flight. Either a draw for your lefties or a cut for your right-handed golfers. Again, nothing terribly concrete about that. Just seems to be the way it is. And when we look into golfers that have had success here in the past, I think you'll kind of agree that it definitely seems to favor golfers that play a cut or lefties that play a draw, or golfers that really can work the ball, but specifically left to right to access some of the pins here. The other thing you'll notice as we work into some of the golfers here is guys that are a little bit longer off the tee tend to pop up here. Not to say that a short hitter can't compete, but the course does play pretty long. Got some really long par fours to contend with here, some long iron approaches, and the greens tend to be small. Or they don't tend to be. The greens are small, and they tend to play pretty firm despite, unless they've had a lot of rain or anything like that. Greens are going to be firm around this track. They are annually, and there's a lot of undulation in the greens here at this track as well, and quite a bit of elevation change, either from tee to fairway or fairway to green throughout the property here at Riviera. Another noticeable feature of Riviera is going to be the extensive bunkering, and you'll see behind me. This is 18, but a lot of high lips here, and a lot of large bunkering. Again, noted as you read player quotes and things like that on Future Fantasy and some of the other websites, and just golfer quotes in general about this course, is the Aussies tend to really enjoy the bunkering here as well. Very familiar to what they get in the Sandbelt area of Australia in the courses they're familiar to play. And you'll see as we look into some of the golfers, Adam Scott being one, namely, it's had some success here at Riviera specifically, and helps that correlation to the Aussies playing well at this track. But it's a par 71, 7,300 yards, not terribly long, not terribly short, but it does play longer than the yardage, in my opinion, because of sort of the way that the course forces you to play some long irons into these greens. Let's see, there are some links to Augusta in the sense that because of the small greens, they really tuck some of the pins behind some of these really high-lit bunkers, as you can see behind me here. And that leads to guys with a high ball flight being able to get a little more aggressive, and also guys with an imagination or creativity that can work the ball around, specifically like a Bubba Watson, Phil Mickelson, guys that really like to work the ball have had quite a bit of success here. A lot of the other guys that don't like to work the ball, you're playing for the center of the green, and then you're hoping either based on the pin position that the contours work in your favor and feed the ball towards the pin, or you're just playing for center of the green, hoping for they're smaller greens. You're not as worried about 3 putts here as you might be on some other courses, but play to the center of the green and hope to 2-putt. This is one of the tougher tracks, probably the toughest track we've seen so far on tour. Does average over par. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and jump into the scorecards here. So, like I said, 7,300 yards, does play over par, plays 60.67 strokes over par, par 71. You'll notice down here, a pretty stark contrast in terms of the way the par 4 is set up. You have 7 par 4s that are all over 450 yards. That's a lot of long par 4s around here, and they average almost a stroke and a half over par. You have one very short par 4 that is iconic at the 10th, 315 yards. Has been called the greatest par 4, drivable par 4 in all of golf, greatest short par 4 in all of golf. Highly touted, very entertaining hole. Guys have a lot of options on how they want to attack it. Guys are either leaving here with a birdie or a double. The scores are wide-ranging on this hole depending on where they get out of position, if they get aggressive, if they lay back and miss their approach. Again, 10 is a really entertaining hole, a lot of fun to watch. You'll see plenty of coverage for that here over the weekend. The other hole that's really interesting and just sort of just iconic is the par 3 6th hole. It's famous because it's got a fairly large green, one of the largest greens on the property here at Riviera, but it's got a bunker right in the middle of it. So if you're on the wrong side of the green from the pin, you are faced with a bit of a challenge. One of the few courses you'll see guys chipping from the green, and if that bunker is in your way, guys will chip over and around it, and they get very creative here. But the 6th hole and the 10th hole are maybe the most iconic. Closing stretch of holes is actually quite a bit of fun to watch. 16, 17, and 18 here. 18 being a very, very difficult uphill blind 475-yard hole. Extremely entertaining par 4 to end the tournament on, with a par 5 that is birdieable right before it. And a really difficult short par 3 at 16, plays even par. And then a difficult 487-yard par 4 for number 15. So the closing stretch of holes, the back 9 here, very entertaining. If guys are getting a hot start on 10 on the back 9, they can go on a run here. But really entertaining stretch of closing holes at Riviera. But in order to find success here, you are going to have to score on the par 5s. They are not prohibitively long here, but you do have to find birdies. This is a tough event. Average winning scores are 13, 14 under on the high end, 7 and 10 under on the low end. It's not a birdie fest. Par is a good score here. You don't have to be super aggressive in trying to keep pace with birdies. You do have to, however, avoid bogeys. Place your golf ball appropriately off the tee, because this is a golf course where fairways are going to be missed and greens are going to be missed at a higher clip. Annually, one of the more difficult driving golf courses. Annually, one of the lower rates of fairways hit on tour. So just be prepared for guys to miss the fairway, and that's sort of where the bomber angle comes in a little bit, is if you're just that much closer and you're out of the fairway, at least you got a wedge in your hand. Tight pins, small greens, you can get a good high ball flight, land it soft on these firm greens. So your bombers do have an advantage here, especially your bombers that can find the fairway. There are some forced carries, some cross bunkering throughout the golf course. There's also a couple of dry creek bed type of things with like large rough that force players to either lay up short of them or try and carry them in a couple of instances. So the bombers do have an advantage on this course, and you'll see here in a second when we look at golfers that have had quite a bit of success here. The bombers definitely are at the top of that list. Ball striking is extremely important here because, again, if you don't have the distance, you need to make sure you're in the fairway here. There are opportunities for the guys that don't have that high ball flight, super long game to contend here. Steve Stricker, for example, contended just 5-6 years ago at this golf course. And again, he's just a keep it in the fairway, make sure he hits every green and sink a few putts kind of guy. So there are opportunities to find success for the non-bombers, but just generally speaking, bombers do have a bit of an advantage around this track. They can let it fly out here, and since the fairways are missed at a little bit higher clip, if they're that much closer to the green, they got a shorter iron, better opportunity to convert for a par. But again, par is a good score on this golf course. As you see, it plays 0.67 strokes over par. So don't expect a birdie fest this week. Do pay attention to the weather. It does dictate how this golf course plays. Specifically, this golf course can play very different morning to afternoon, with the POA greens getting super bumpy, as well as the Kikuyu grass drying out, holding moisture from the morning, dries out. The course can speed up quite a bit towards the afternoon. Something to keep in mind if you're trying to stack tee time splits. But let's take a look at the golfers that have had success here at this track, as well as I've already built a little bit of a model for myself. So I'll share with you my initial model ranks. Again, my model is based on length of hole, performance by length of hole, and that's it. So a little bit different look this week, but the adjusted course history average, Dustin Johnson is comfortably at the top. You see his history here the last 5 years. Couple of things Dustin Johnson does well: super long off the tee, plays a very controlled cut shot, also very high ball flight, and has played well and putted well on POA greens throughout his career. Obviously enjoys his opportunities at Riviera: 16th, a first, a fourth, a second, and a second in the last 5 outings here. Number 1 ranked in my model, number 1 rank in adjusted course history average, comfortably at the top. And again, he is the prototypical player for a course like this. The other guy, Bubba Watson, sort of the other end of the spectrum in what I described, but still elite distance, high ball flight. But Bubba is very creative. If you look at Bubba's comments about the course, he enjoys the creative nature of it. Gives him an opportunity to sort of draw up shots in his head. One thing Bubba likes about this course, and interesting note, he also likes the same thing about Augusta, is the fact that the course doesn't change. They don't really do anything different to the course. The course is always the same. So golfers can sort of prepare for it and know that there's a level of consistency in what to expect when they step on the first tee. So Bubba can sort of just draw his shots up based on where he's at, based on how the course is playing, and he likes that consistency. So, but again, he plays a totally different game than Dustin Johnson, but he does work the ball the same direction as Dustin Johnson, from left to right. Same thing, Dustin Johnson works the ball from left to right with his cut. So something to keep in mind, as you are picking golfers, that those guys that work the ball left to right have had quite a bit of success combined. This year, 2017, Bubba didn't actually miss the cut. He withdrew, but I count them the same. And a missed cut, a withdrawal, and a disqualification are the same as a missed cut. So in terms of, for my math. So he didn't actually miss the cut, just a withdrawal. So his adjusted course average is actually a little bit better than this number reflects. But you see, even the guy that's won here 3 times and had one bad year, still comfortably behind the very consistent game of Dustin Johnson this week. So Adam Hadwin is sort of the other guy I talked about, the opposite side of the coin, and not a long hitter, but finds enough fairways, good long iron game, and then finds a way to get a few putts to drop. Martin Laird, very high ball flight, great tee to green player, not the greatest putter. Small greens probably help him out here quite a bit, but he's had several good years here at this track. Obviously, the model doesn't like him quite as much. His current form isn't really there, but and his performance on the whole lengths doesn't exemplify, sort of what his history here does. But interesting as we sort of work down guys that rank really highly in the model: Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy. Rory, obviously one of the best drivers of the golf ball, super high ball flight, very long off the tee, and dangerous whenever he is hitting the ball well. Interesting, a couple of top 20s in his last 5 years, but rates out really well on the holes by distance. Hideki Matsuyama, same thing, exceptional from tee to green. Has had a couple of really strong outings here, and again, not the world's greatest putter, but has found success on these smaller greens, and POA sort of helps level the playing field. Patrick Cantlay ranks top 10, obviously withdrew from the event last week, but his first outing here last year, top 5 finish, really strong. Look for him to kind of do the same thing again. But when you look down here, Matt Kuchar's had some decent outings, nothing too great. You're just mediocre 20 of 26, but it did have a top 8 or top 10 there, and then a missed cut. You get down a little bit further. Some of the guys that are interesting to me that rate out really well in the model but have never played here. This is a course that probably does not favor the first timers all that much, in the sense that you do kind of have to know the contours of the greens here and where to put the ball based on the pin position, because you can't go at all these pins. You have to play away from the pins in some cases in order to, maybe maximize your shots. And that's tough for some of the newer guys to do, especially when you don't know the contours or how they're going to react. So maybe be a bit leery of that. But guys that I'm not worried about, Jon Rahm, for example, very prototypical game like DJ, plays a cut, long off the tee, high enough ball flight, aggressive enough. Shouldn't have too much trouble on his first time around this track. Has also played and shown really well in his outings in California. Obviously, he got his first tour win in California last year. So, Jon Rahm, not concerned about, but interested to see how Sungjae Im and Terrell Hatton play. Obviously, rating out really well in the model. Don't have any course history here, but this is a driver-heavy course. Again, look for Joaquin Niemann to potentially get back on track here as well. Some guys that are interesting to me down low that maybe don't rate out well or have had some mixed history. Keegan Bradley rates out pretty well, playing better this year than he has maybe the last couple. At least, finished really well last year at the end of the year and then kind of kept that momentum going this year. I look for him to have a better event than the missed cuts this week. Moving down, some guys that have played poorly here. Tony Finau rates out really well in the model. Again, bomber, long, high ball flight. Should be able to play well here. Obviously played very well last year, but 2 missed cuts prior and a 56th. Mixed history for Tony. Tony's interesting to me, especially coming off the miscut this week. Or just not the greatest performance. I think that Tony makes a great GPP play this week. Don't know where his price is going to come in at, but interesting how well he rates out in my models versus, sort of the polarizing course history. Potentially keep some people off of him. Siwoo Kim, guy that's playing really well this week. I think people are going to jump on. Obviously has not had success here at Riviera throughout the years. 3 back-to-back-to-back missed cuts. I don't know if it's the Kikuyu grass or what the situation is, but Siwoo does not seem to be comfortable at this track. I do think he'll garner quite a bit of attention, being that he's got a strong performance going this week. Mark Leishman's another one that's interesting to me. You would think, being an Aussie and sort of familiar with the greens, the Kikuyu grass, and the bunkering here, that he would rate out much better. But he's got a 5th place finish, had a great year, 1 year, and then, just lots of missed cuts and poor performances. So a couple of popular players I think that might be potential duds this week. JJ Spawn's another one I think might get a little bit of popularity this week. Not performed well at this track in the past. So, but again, you look at the top of this list, and it's no real surprise to see guys that have had success here at this track. They tend to be a bit longer. They tend to be able to either very creative with the ball, Bubba Watson, Phil Mickelson, or just be very consistent with their games, i.e. Dustin Johnson, Brendan Steele when he's playing well, very consistent tee to green. Adam Scott, same thing, 11th and the 2nd here. Interesting flyer, James Hahn is a guy that will be on people's radar this week. Really, really loves this track. It might be his one of his few tournament wins. Might be his only tournament win. But this course and this track mean a lot to James Hahn. Always seems to play well. James Hahn, despite not being maybe the most talented golfer and certainly a B tier player compared to some of the other names up here, very high ball flight and great long irons when he's playing well. So James Hahn, interesting, flyer that is probably not going to rate out well, but course history suggests that he should have a good week. A couple of guys, Jason Kokrak withdrew last week, but rates out really well, is continuing to have a great solid season, should be a fairly popular play, will be in my player pool. JB Holmes, guy I wrote up last week, really disappointing performance this week, but tends to play well in California, has played well at this track before. I'll need to dig a bit deeper into JB to see if I want to jump back on, but JB will be a low-owned guy this week after his performance here that does have quite a bit of upside, especially being on the bomber high ball flight side of things. Should be able to score. So, but with that, guys, I will... I think we're going to wrap it up. I guess one other thing, this is a track that you don't find form at. Guys tend to kind of need to be in form. You'll see a lot of statistics, a lot of correlations between playing well in Phoenix, playing well at playing well at Pebble, and then playing well here. Guys tend to need to have a little bit of form before getting to this track. It is going to be the toughest track they're playing. Not the kind of place that guys are going to find their game. Definitely want to kind of lean towards guys that have had a solid outing in Phoenix or had a solid outing at Pebble or both. So something to keep in mind for you there. And then guys that work the ball left to right. Anyway, DFS Jimmy signing off for Fanshare Sports this week. Best of luck. We'll see you guys next week.